monthly indicator of economic growth, commonly referred to as the MIEG. This release, as you know, matters a lot because it provides early monthly insight into how Ghana's economy is performing well before the official quarterly domestic product, or what we refer to as gross domestic product, GDP, figures are published. For stakeholders such as policymakers, businesses, households, investors, and development partners, this information helps guide decisions at the right time. One may ask, what is the monthly indicator of economic growth, or MIEG? So I want to begin the presentation by explaining what it means in very simple terms. The MIEG is a high-frequency economic indicator. That means it tracks changes in economic activity every month, instead of waiting for quarterly or annual results. It combines information from the three major sectors of the economy, namely agriculture, industry, and services. So together, these sectors represent the full structure of Ghana's economy. The MIEG is built using the International Statistical Standards, specifically the United Nations Systems of National Accounts, also known as SNA 2008. This ensures consistency, credibility, and international comparability. Most importantly, the MIEG acts as an early signal of quarterly GDP growth, helping us understand the direction of the economy as it unfolds. So how do we interpret the MIEG? Now, the MIEG is carefully aligned with our quarterly national accounts, using the same underlying data sources wherever possible. Because of this alignment, movements in the MIEG usually point in the same direction as future GDP results will show. However, it is important to interpret the MIEG with appropriate caution. First, it uses early and incomplete data, since it is released before the GDP. Second, it is more volatile, meaning it can move up or down more sharply from month to month. Third, the data are not seasonally adjusted due to the limited length of the time series that we've gathered so far. So the MIEG does not replace GDP. Instead, it provides timely guidance on economic trends. Now, let's talk a bit about the release schedule. For the fourth quarter of 2025, the October and November MIEG serve as leading indicator. And today, we'll be releasing the October MIEG. And they will serve as leading indicator ahead of the release of the official GDP estimate for quarter 4 of 2025, which we have scheduled to release in March 2026. This target release allows users to follow the economy in near real time, rather than wait for 3 months for the quarterly GDP release. The MIEG follows the same 3-stage revision as we have in the GDP, namely, we'll first release a provisional figure, and then we'll revise it, and then we finally release the final figures. So revisions would usually come as a result of we getting improved data, or as a result of we getting fuller coverage. And all figures we are going to present to you today are on October 2025 MIEG, and they are provisional. Now, to the headline results. The monthly indicator of economic growth index for October 2025 is 112.7, compared to 108.6 in October 2024. The index is benchmarked to 2023, which has an index of 100, which means the economy is performing well above its 2023 level. The year-on-year growth rate from the MIEG index is 3.8% in October 2025 compared to 3.0% in October 2024. In plain language, this means the economy produced 3.8% more output in October 2025 than in October 2024. The data shows actually that from October 2023 to October 2025, the economy follows a clear upward path, rising from an index value of 105.4 to 112.7. This confirms that economic activities have been expanding steadily over the past 2 years. Now, let me take you to the sectoral growth performance. And let's begin with agriculture. Agriculture recorded a growth rate of 0.9% in October 2025, compared to 2.1% in October 2024. This reflects continued, though modest, expansion in agricultural activity. The trend is largely driven by fish production, which plays a significant role in monthly agricultural output. It is important to remember that agriculture is highly seasonal, especially towards the end of the year. Agriculture's trajectory from October 2023 to October 2025 shows that the sector rises from an index of 103.5 to 106.6, confirming gradual growth over time, even with the seasonal fluctuations that we are seeing. Turning to industry, industry recorded a growth rate of 3.0% in October 2025, a clear improvement from the 0.4% recorded in October 2024. The expansion is primarily driven by manufacturing, indicating improved industrial activity. The data clearly shows expansion relative to the same period last year, reinforcing the positive signals coming from manufacturing. Now to the services sector. The services sector remains the main driver of Ghana's economy. Services expanded by 5.5% in October 2025, close to the 5.6% recorded in the same period in the previous year. Growth in the services sector was driven mainly by information and communication and wholesale and retail trade. This reflects increased demand for communication services and commercial activity across the economy. The data shows a strong, consistent upward trend in services, with the MIEG index rising from 103 in October 2023 to 114.7 in October 2025. This sustained performance highlights the central role of services in supporting overall economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now talk about growth contributions. In simple terms, contribution to growth tells us how much each sector adds to the total growth rate based on both its size and its growth. In October 2025, agriculture contributed 1.3% to the overall growth of 3.8%. Industry contributed 28.7%, and services contributed the most, 75%, with net indirect taxes contributing negative 4.7% to the overall growth. Together, these contributions sum to the total growth rate of 3.8%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what are the key takeaways from today's release on the monthly indicator of economic growth for October 2025? Overall growth increased from 3% in October 2024 to 3.8% in October 2025, indicating stronger economic performance. Agriculture grew more slowly in October 2025 than same period in 2024. Industry expanded much faster in October 2025 than same period in 2024. Services maintained strong and stable growth over the period. The sustained upward trend in October suggests positive momentum entering the final quarter of the year, and I'm talking about 2025. While monthly figures can be volatile, the data signals continued expansion, particularly from the services and industry sectors. From the data, we see that the key drivers of the October 2025 growth are manufacturing growth, which actually strengthened industrial performance, communication and trade, which boosted services, and seasonal agricultural activities, especially in the fishing subsector, which supported overall output. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, based on the evidence, we offer 3 practical messages. For government, continue supporting industrial productivity and value addition while strengthening agricultural resilience. For businesses, leverage opportunities in manufacturing, trade, and digital services. And for households, plan carefully, take advantage of economic opportunities, and remain mindful of seasonal fluctuations. Let me reaffirm the commitment of the Ghana Statistical Service. We remain dedicated to producing timely, accurate, relevant, and credible statistics that support evidence-based decision-making for national development. Finally, we extend our sincere appreciation to all data-providing institutions, our partners, including our media practitioners, across government, across the private sector, across the civil society, etc. And I also want to single out the staff of the Ghana Statistical Service, whose professionalism and dedication made this release possible. We count on your continued support as we work together to strengthen Ghana's statistical system. Thank you for your attention, and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Dr. Lassa, for the presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have received the estimates for October 2025, monthly indicator of economic activity growth. The floor is now open for your questions, clarifications, and if there are any contribution that you want to make. So if you have any question, please raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you to pose your question.
Echo, you had questions before the presentation. Yes.
Yeah, so Doc, thank you for your time. Okay. Doc, this trip, I noticed we didn't get the comparative figure for September. I know by what you said, it may be subject to maybe a revision. So the September revised figure or the September figure will give us a bit more guidance and help in the size and in the scope.
Okay.
That is one. Two, yes, so this is October. So I noticed that this is about 2.5 months lag thereabout.
Yeah.
You know, is it always going to be the same, or is there any way that this can be closed a bit to say a month instead of 2 months?
Okay.
Because I noticed that if this were to be the case, the last data to end a quarter will clash with the time you do release the quarterly GDP. So I noticed in the last time we did release both data on the same day. So if there is scope for one to precede the other, maybe, I don't know how far that can guide you, but let me know your thoughts. Thank you.
All right, we'll take some more then.
Thank you. So my question has to do with the revisions. I'm Emmanuel from CTFM. So I've been interacting with people, and the concerns that keeps coming up is the issue about revision. So,
Revisions,
for
yeah.
instance, the MEG for July, we realized there was some amount of revisions to the sectors that contributed to the growth. So one question that came up is, why don't we
Yeah.
give room to we get all the data, then come back later on to review or revise the data that we turn out?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, anyone?
Kingsley Ghanaian. So I also want to ask if you can maybe give us the figure for the same period last year so we can do better.
Same period last year.
Last
Okay.
year. October 2024.
Four.
The-
Don't worry, we'll answer it. So please let him feel free to ask his question.
Okay.
Is it, that's it? All right. So I think I recorded 4 questions, but they're all very much interrelated. Yeah. A lot of them are on revisions. Yeah. So first, I mean, your questions about whether September MEG has been revised. So September MEG has not been revised. What we reported in our last release is what we still have. Yes, which is 5.3, and it's on the screen, it's on the board. Yeah, so we have, so September is 5.3, and August is 5.4. August has not also been revised, as we reported the last time. Like I mentioned to you, just to add to the response, we do the revision when we have more complete data, that's one. And then number 2, when we have new data. When we have revised data, let me put it like that. So we can even have a data, but then we have one that has been revised, which is an update of the previous one. In that case, we do a revision. So when we haven't done a revision, it means we don't have any new data to do such revision. So September and August are as we reported in our last release. So that's the first response. Then the second one, you're talking about the lag, whether we can reduce the lag of producing the monthly GDP. That's a good question. In fact, we are striving to do that. But you know, we started the release of the monthly indicator of economic growth not long ago. We started it, was it the last quarter of 2025. So we are very young in the process. So as we move on, and then we try and move towards perfection, we'll try and then reduce the lag of producing the data. And then there was a question as to whether the concern you raised about the revisions. You see, we are very careful about how we interpret the MEG. So in every release, I try to emphasize how we should interpret it. And so today, I made 3 points. The first point I made was that because it's an early indicator, so in other words, we still want to release an indicator that will give us a sense of direction of where the economy is going before the quarterly GDP is released. So it's always a cost-benefit analysis. So what you have to do is that if you want more frequent indicator, something must give. And here, what gives is that we don't wait to get full information before we publish, before we give you that information. We don't wait to get full data before we give you the direction of the economy. So that is what we have to, what has to give in order for us to be able to give you more frequent what? Data. So we are quick to always tell you that the MEG information we are releasing, we need to be cautious in terms of its interpretation because it comes with incomplete data as at the time that we are releasing. And then we also said that because we've started this work not long ago, we don't have much enough series to deseasonalize, right? And so the data is not deseasonalized because there are monthly seasons that we observe in practical terms. But over time, when we get some more data, we'll be able to produce some deseasonalized data. And then we also mentioned that because it's more frequently released, we'll see more volatility. So the question we should ask ourselves is, should we rather wait until we get the full, complete data and give you the quarterly GDP as we have been doing? Or we give you an indicator that will be based on the data that is readily available as at the time we are releasing. But then that indicator would be able to give you some indication with regards to where the economy is going in terms of trend, which would all gravitate towards what the quarterly results will be. And I think all of us would join me to say that it is better to have something than not to have at all. And so that's the essence of the MIEG. And then to my colleague from, I think, Ghanaian Times, he asked for the data for October, and it's there. And in fact, in the interpretation, I always related to October, same period last year. Yeah, so for example, if you took the MIEG, the growth rate of October 2025, which is 3.8, we compared it to the growth rate of October 2024, which was what? 3.0. And for each of the sectoral growth rates, we are able to report both what obtained in October 2025 as well as what? October 2024. And the data is there in the presentation that we have shared with you. You would also find it in the bulletin as well as the newsletter that we have circulated. I hope I've been able to address all the questions. Thank you. Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Ajona Mengsan for FM News Online. Yes, looking at the figures, I think they are pointing to the right direction. But then, as journalists, we want to look at it from the qualitative perspective. So, from your perspective, what will you say? You know, trying to relate the figures to the facts that, okay, how can we conclude that all is okay with Ghanaians?
Okay, all right. Let's go ahead. Any more questions? Yes, Justice.
We keep asking, and the response has always been that, okay, let me say what we keep asking first. Sometimes we see some situation in a particular sector, and then we ask whether any further work has been done or would be done to unravel why such developments in the particular sector. But most of the times we do not get this. And so I don't know what we are going to, for instance, you said agriculture was the one that lagged, if I heard you right,
Yes.
in the current release. Now, what happened to agriculture? Was it lack of rains? Was it maybe poor harvest? Whatever it is, we would like to know, even if not now, at a later date, we would like to know why the facts behind the figures.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Is that all we have?
Hello, Doc.
Okay.
Good morning.
Yeah.
I would want to know what are the risks. You indicated that the economy is expanding. What are the risks, and how do you mitigate those risks? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any more? Okay, so I would, yes, go ahead.
In the spirit of the risk and all these things,
Yeah.
I also want to add one. So, Doc, you use similar tools for your GDP as you use for MEG, how different do you do the evaluation, given that this one is just within a month? And do you do it as you do inflation? Because inflation, you pick the data, I think, just the first week of each month or so. So for this one, what is the maybe methodology like, and how different or similar is it to the mode you use to calibrate the GDP? How different is that from this one?
No, sorry, I didn't get the question well. Can you, yeah.
I'm saying that you have different tools that you use to come by this data.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And I'm saying that because this is for on a monthly basis, how different is it in the application of these tools from when you're calculating GDP?
Okay. When you say tools, what do you mean?
Like tools, of course, you have your own modes on way of getting your data. And
the methodology. Okay. Yeah.
How does this vary from what you use to do the GDP?
The GDP itself?
Yeah, GDP itself.
Okay.
Given that
Okay. Yeah. I get your point. I get it now.
Right.
Yeah.
In the case of inflation, you pick the data in just about the first week of the month, and that should suffice.
Okay, that's right.
How do you do that in regards to this one, to given there's also a monthly data release?
Okay. Yes. Are we done?
Yeah, I think
okay.
Because somebody asked earlier that why wouldn't you wait for is it the global standard, to have these releases ahead of, the quarterly GDP release? And so, yes, is it the global standard, a requirement? Thank you.
Okay, so let me give some responses, and then my colleagues will come in to fill the gap. So the first question was with regards to the figures and reality. I think that's the question you asked. And if I should quote, you said, it's all okay for Ghanaians. I think, are Ghanaians okay with the numbers we are releasing, or with the, shall I say, the performance of the economy? Does the situation reflect, so I wish, you're asking me a question to go into the shoes of all Ghanaians and tell you whether they are okay with what we are reporting and then what is they actually feeling. It's a very difficult question. It is you who should be telling me whether, whether the data we are releasing, because you deal with other Ghanaians, you deal with a lot of people. But, I mean, that's on a lighter note. But on a more serious note, so at Ghana Statistical Service, what we do, and in fact, that's for any national statistical office for that matter, is to ensure that we are collecting data to tell us about the health of the economy. And we do that from many perspectives. So when it comes to the GDP, we are talking about performance of what? Economic activities in the agricultural sector, industrial sector, and then what? Services. If you look at it from the expenditure side, we are looking at consumption, investment, and then net exports. So we collect data to be able to tell us what is happening. But I will be quick to add that the data that we collect, though we're able to tell you that the GDP is this value or this amount of money, and then the growth rate is this figure. You see, we do it at the national level, that's overall GDP, and we'll do it at the sectoral level, and we'll do it at what? Subsectors. But I can tell you that there are sub-subsectors, sub-sub-sub-subsectors. There are many decomposition, right? But you can't do everything, so you have to come up with statistics that fully is representative of what is happening in the entire economy. And that's what we are doing. And so what we are doing gives you an indication of the totality of what is happening in the economy. So those are the figures. Now, if it comes to the ordinary Ghanaian, there are many ways the ordinary Ghanaian would use to tell whether the figures that are released are what they're actually feeling or what they're actually going through. There are many, many ways you can do that. Whether it is GDP, whether it's inflation, or whether it is any other economic activity. Bottom line, all these things we are doing, or when you have a president who has been elected to lead a country, to, spearhead affairs of the country, all the president is doing with his team is to make sure that they put in place certain interventions to improve the living standards or the living conditions of what? The people. So the bottom line is about what? The people, at all times. Whether you're looking at it from the economic angle, you're looking at it from the social angle, from the political angle, from whatever angle you're looking at it, it's about improvement in the lives of what? The people. That's the bottom line. So, as an average individual, what you ask yourself is, well, last 6 months, this was my position. When I was going to the market to buy A, B, C, D. This is how the conditions were. 6 months after, how are the conditions like? Are the prices the same? Have they gone up? If they are going up, are they going up very fast? Or if they are going up, are they going up in a more predictable manner? Or are they coming down? You should be able to tell. You should be able to answer that question as an individual. So the numbers we are releasing are not just numbers for numbers' sake. They are numbers that are supposed to reflect exactly what is happening to the economy and to people. And we release GDP figures, we release inflation, we release employment figures. If you put all of those together, you should be able to tell whether the numbers we are releasing are actually what you are going through. Now, when you come to GDP, it's basically what? Economic activities. In other words, we are looking at the value of all goods and services that we produce in the geographical boundaries of the economy, whether we are talking about services sector, the industrial sector, or the services sector, industrial sector, or agriculture, right? In terms of the sectors. So that's GDP for you. So the question is, as an individual, if you look at the economy, the economic activities in all of these sectors I've talked about, are they improving? Are people now engaging in more economic activities? And there are many ways you can tell whether you are seeing improvement or not. One of the very quick indicators you can use to tell is whether people are being employed. Because you have to employ people to do their work, isn't it? So employment is part of the inputs to production. So if you have employment improving, it means that things are going well. If you have goods and services that you are looking for to buy, and they are there, and they are being, you see them in the market, it means that, yes, economic activities are going well. So that's how individuals will use to judge as to whether things are getting better for them or not. And then the second question was, yes, so Justice, I think you asked a question as to the details. He's asking questions that relate to causation, what we call in economics as a causation. So if, for example, we are saying that the economy in October grew by 3.8%, if you relate it to same period last year, and we are saying services growth was 5.5%, industry was agric 0.9, and industry was a certain growth number. So the question you're asking is, what are the drivers of this growth? Exactly. In services, for example. In services, we're able to tell you that communication and then both wholesale and retail trade were the main drivers. We're able to tell you that. In agric, we're able to tell you that largely fisheries was driving the growth in agric. And then in industry, we're able to tell you that manufacturing was largely doing the job. So the question is, to what extent, in terms of disaggregation, can we do this attribution? we can do it to the extent that our data collection relates to. We can do that. And when we introduced the monthly indicator of economic activity, one of the caveats we gave was that for now, we can only go up to the sectoral level, which is agri, services, and industry. As we go into time with regards to the MIEG, we'll be able to do some more disaggregation, and we'll be able to give you some better data with regards to the sectors and subsectors that are contributing to the growth. But for now, we are at the sectoral level. Fortunately, for the quarterly and annual GDP releases that we do, at least we're able to, in addition to the sectors, we're able to break the sectors into what? Subsectors. So we can go down to that level. We can do that. And the most important point I'm making is that we'll be able to give you the breakdown to the extent that we are collecting data on those breakdowns. If we don't collect data on a certain disaggregation, we will not be able to, we will not be in a position to give you data on that. And I must also say that the disaggregation we currently report on are the internationally recognized and standardized disaggregation. So it's not like Ghana is doing something different from what the international community is doing. Then the third question that you asked was about risks. Someone asked a question about risks. Yeah, that's Francis. Yes, we've seen the growth trajectory. So far, we're heading towards the right direction. In fact, any positive growth means there's there's expansion. Anytime growth is positive, it means that economic activities have what? Expanded. That's, in simple language, that's what it means. When growth is negative, it means that economic activities have what? Contracted. That's what it means. It means that if, for example, the whole of a certain period, you produce 100 Ghana cedis worth of economic activities, and there is negative growth, it means that the new economic activity will be less than what? 100. So there's contraction. But anytime you have positive, it means that you expanded the economic what? Activity. So for example, agric, we said the growth rate was what? 0.9. Some may say, well, 0.9 is the lowest of the sectoral growth that we recorded, 0.9. Does it mean that agric did not expand? And the answer is that no. It doesn't mean agric did not. In fact, agric expanded by 0.9%. So if you look at the index, you see that the index would have what? Would have increased. So we need to interpret it within that context. Now, risks. So yes, so growth, we are seeing a good trajectory, but there are risks. And the things that you should watch out when you want to grow your economy are inflation. You need to watch out for the exchange rate movements. In fact, there are risks that relates to even the fiscal. So the fiscal, you need to watch what is happening to the deficits. In fact, you need to watch what is happening to debt. For example, if government is borrowing and the amount of money that is borrowed, let's say we go to the market, we raise some 2 billion or 3 billion Ghana cedis to support growth or to support development in general. But after we borrowed the money, we spend the money in consumption or on consumption activities. What will happen? It may not affect growth that much, right? Or if you spend the money in areas that are not growth-oriented, it's a risk, and it would not affect growth that much. So you might have borrowed the money, you spend the money, but you're not seeing the impact on growth. So that's a risk that you have to watch. The FX side, at all times, if you want to grow your economy, you need stabilization. And when we say economic stabilization, we are talking about tolerable levels of the key economic indicators in the 4 sectors of the economy. So for example, price, which is inflation. There's no way you'll be able to grow your economy if you are in an environment of hyperinflation or inflation that you cannot predict. Today it is 20, tomorrow it is 25, it is 35. You can't predict it. It's extremely difficult. No economy grows within such, such an environment. Things are so unpredictable. You will not be able to attract businesses to come and invest in the country to produce the goods and services that increase the GDP. So you need to watch what? Inflation movement. But you also have to watch the FS movement, because FS movement, when they are stable, when they are predictable, is also as what? The macroeconomic stabilization environment that I'm talking about. So FS movements can pose some risks if they are very volatile. They are very, very volatile. They can pose some risks. In fact, there are other risks. For example, if you take the energy sector. Without energy, can we produce goods and services in the country? No. So again, that's a huge risk factor you have to look at. So if you have an energy sector that is bedeviled with a lot of issues, whether financial or non-financial, and you don't identify and mitigate those risks, it will affect your growth, because you need constant energy production to support what? The growth process. So those are some of the risk factors which have to be identified, and then we put in place mitigation measures to mitigate their impact on growth. And then, Eko, you talked about the tools that we use to calibrate the monthly indicator of economic activities. So the main difference, this is an index. So with the quarterly GDP or the annual GDP, we collect the data and we use the data to estimate what the value of goods and services is, and that's the GDP. This one, we get the data, we develop an index from the data, and then based on the movements of the index, then we use it to compute what? Movement in economic growth or economic performance, and that's the growth that you see here. So the main difference in terms of methodology is that for the GDP quarterly and GDP annual that we release, we use the raw data we collect from all the sectors of the economy, subsectors, and from the institutions that give us the data to compute or to estimate the GDP directly. Whereas in the MEG, because it's an early economic indicator, we sometimes have to give. Reliability has to give a bit because we don't have complete data. So use all the information you have to compute an index first, and then you use the growth in the index to proxy the growth rates for the economy for the particular month you are dealing with. And then there was a question with regards to standards, that the monthly indicator of economic growth, are we going by global standards, etc.? So that is a new norm. In fact, countries are now moving to get more frequent indicators. But I must quickly add that even advanced countries, not many of them have started the publication of the monthly indicator of economic growth. And if you come to our sub-region, we are the pace setter. As usual, Ghana is a pace setter in most of these things. We have started it. And in fact, we have many countries knocking on our doors every time to study what we are doing because they want to follow suit. So I think it's a great job the Ghana Statistical Service is doing on behalf of the whole country. And it's actually lifting the flag of Ghana up. And we'll continue to improve the methodology we are using. We'll continue to ensure that we enhance the data for reporting on the monthly indicator of economic growth, so that at the end of the day, the statistics and the data that are generated and reported will actually go to inform decision-making to support national development. Thank you. Yes, Justice. Yeah.
Last question.
Now, you economists say that sometimes an expansionary approach induces some inflation. I would like to know, like this growth we are seeing, though a bit marginal, is it necessarily due to the approach by government? Is government embarking on an expansionary approach to economic management? Now, if so, for a country that is still managing debt, you know, yet to come out of the IMF reforms, which people believe would limit growth to an extent before actually releasing the plugs. Is it safe? And I believe that is what Francis wanted to know, that is the growth, would the growth not create a risk, maybe in, like you said, debt, you know, again, a ballooning debt again. And this week of since last month, you see government going to the domestic bond market, raising billions of cedis. I don't know whether it is for debt reprofiling or to finance, you know, budget activities. So will it not create a situation where the private sector is crowded out? Will it not create inflation in the future, although we are seeing inflation dipping now? I believe that is the kind of things agitating our mind.
Doc, I think justice must pay you to be doing this extra work, because these questions are for the finance minister.
Excellent. So he has given you the answer.
These questions are for the finance minister.
Eko, thanks for coming to my rescue. All right.
These are the policy.
Yes.
I was thinking about something.
Yeah.
You know that you have a basket that you use for even GDP.
You have a what?
A basket.
Basket, yeah,
for
right.
GDP.
Yeah.
And
Basket for GDP.
Pardon my language.
Go
You
ahead.
have a
You mean
basket.
basket for inflation?
A basket of items that you use to tabulate your GDP. There's my statement.
Okay.
I'm seeing a similar basket being used to calculate the MEG. Now, in the case where, when it comes to rebasing the GDP, you realize that the economy may have a certain measure of currency or currency that GDP will not capture because there hasn't been the requisite revision to capture it.
Yeah.
So in this monthly thing you do, don't you think that you'll be capturing a few things that are more of modern trend than our database captures? Thereby, if there had been a rebasing, all of that will be factored.
Okay.
How do you get the difference when you are working between MEG and GDP?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No, there's a third one. And then,
Yeah,
so we'll take the last one and then we can respond.
So, Doc,
Yeah.
Ghana is not an economy on its own. We are in a global village.
Yes.
This expansion, this growth that we are seeing, in terms of local contribution and international contribution, do you consider those indicators also? If so, if you can give us an update on the contribution of the local economy to this growth and the contribution of the international economy to this growth.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll ask my colleagues to respond to some of the questions, but let me just give the overview, and then my colleagues will come in. So the first one. So Justice, you got your answer, right? You were asking very good questions, but that were meant for the finance minister to the government's decision. I mean, please. Yeah. Okay. 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 So anyway, so once I'm trying not to answer such policy questions, but let me make a clarification. So he talked about expansion, expansionary. So basically, we have two main types of policies that are implemented to support macroeconomic objectives, right? So we have the monetary policy and then the fiscal policy. Of course, there are other structural policies and there are other policies, but let me just narrow them to these two policies. Initially, when it comes to the fiscal, we are dealing with the revenues and expenditures and then the debt, right? How we use, we manage the revenues, expenditures, and debt to affect the overall economy. And when it comes to the monetary, and of course the fiscal is done by the fiscal authorities, which is the Ministry of Finance. And then the monetary policy is basically formulated and implemented by the Central Bank of Ghana, right? And that's basically using money supply, interest rates and all that to affect movements in the economy. Okay. Now, he used a word, and that's the clarity I want to give. The word he used was expansionary policy. So usually when we say fiscal policy is expansionary, what we mean is that you're operating a fiscal regime where your deficits are doing what? Are increasing. Or expansionary simply means that your spending is what? Is increasing. And then your revenue is what? Is reducing. Right? Or vice versa. Or both. In fact, both can give you. And if you put the two together, it will give you a rising deficit. So that's expansionary fiscal policy. He has a point. You see, the fiscal policy that governments formulate and implement, one way or the other, can affect growth. So his question is on growth. So I think if I should reword your question, so it's not growth expansion. It's what the question is. The fiscal expansion that governments do, how do they affect growth? I think that's the question you were trying to ask. Or if you want in terms of the monetary policy, if the central bank embarks on expansionary monetary policy, how will that affect growth? That's the type of question he was trying to ask. And the simple answer there is that it is not evil to embark on expansionary fiscal policy or contractionary fiscal policy. The opposite is the contractionary, if the opposite. It all depends upon where you are in terms of the state of the economy and the objectives that you are pursuing. There are times that you actually have to do expansionary fiscal policy to address your economic challenges. And there are other times that, if the economy is overheated, you don't want to do expansionary fiscal policy. You understand that? You have to retract. In other words, if you're in a period of recession, for example, it's recommended that you do what? Expansionary fiscal policy. And if the economy is overheating, you have to do contractionary fiscal policy. So there's no, we can't say that, expansionary fiscal policy is bad or it is not good. We don't say that. But rather, you have to look at the economy you are dealing with and ask yourself as to whether, in this stage of the economy, whether expansionary fiscal policy will solve your problem or it will not solve your problem. You get the point I'm making? So that's how you answer. And if you look at developing countries, not only Ghana, most of the time, because of the huge infrastructure deficit, they tend to run expansionary fiscal policy to close the infrastructure gap. Because we are talking about development. You need roads, you need schools, you need hospitals, you need all those kinds of stuff. And if you need them and your revenue is not able to support that, then you probably have to borrow more money to do that. That's usually the mentality to do that. But everything we have a cost. So if you keep doing that and you don't check the internal consistency, you don't check the tolerable levels of your economy in regards to how you can expand or contract, you'll be in serious trouble. So at any point in time, you need to ask yourself. Very important to give that exactly. So whether we're overheating or exactly. So that's how I would answer that question, right, with regards to expansionary and contractionary. And then the second question was, you're asking about the GDP with regards to rebasing. Let me put it like that. I think that's a good question as well. So, Francis, when's the last time we rebased GDP? 2018, yeah. So last time we rebased 2018. But ideally, every 5 years, minimum, you have to rebase your economy. You have to rebase the GDP. Because when you don't rebase and you use the old indicators or the old rebasing that you do to report on current GDP, you may not be able to give the truer version of what is happening. It doesn't mean that we cannot still use the statistics we are churning out, but we need better data, more updated data that will give us information to make better informed decisions to affect, the economy. That's why we are embarking on the rebasing thing that we are doing. And by close of this year, we would have completed the rebasing. All the necessary surveys that we need to do to get the data to do the rebasing, we've done them. We just completed the GLSS 8. Antabna is here, she's the one leading the process. So we have the data. And there are other IBES, we've just completed that as well. And some other surveys that we have done, which are giving us the information to be able to do the rebasing. So when we do the rebasing, not only is it going to improve the annual GDP data we produce and also the quarterly GDP data, also the MIEG, it will improve it as well. So it cuts across. And then the last question was from Francis. Yes, he was talking about comparison. Yes, so Francis, yes, we can always do the comparison. Fortunately, or let me say unfortunately, fortunately for Ghana, I told you Ghana is a pace setter in most of these developments. Not many countries are able to produce even quarterly GDP. In fact, if you take the sub-region, a number of countries they're not able to do quarterly GDP. They do what? Annual, right? So we do annual, and then we're able to produce what? Quarterly. And we started quarterly a long time ago. And we don't just do the output approach. We actually do both the output and the what? And then the expenditure approach. With the hope that when we complete this rebasing, we'll add the third approach, which is the income approach. So we do quarterly as well. And then we've just introduced what? The monthly indicator of economic growth. So yes, there are data that we can use to compare, but most of the quarterly data for the other countries are non-existent. They are not there, especially for the sub-region. They don't have, some of them don't have quarterly data, so it's difficult to compare. But when it comes to annual data, we can always compare. In fact, our data is published on our website, but fortunately we have the IMF, what they call the RIO, the Regional Economic Outlook, that publishes the growth numbers for all the sub-Saharan African countries. Even the RIO, that's the World Economic Outlook, publishes that for the blocks, the regional blocks as well. So you can always go there and then do the comparison. But I think the point that I should make is that, as we know, the fiscal trajectory that government is pursuing is what we call fiscal consolidation. So what fiscal consolidation means in simple language is that you're operating your revenues, expenditures, and debts in a manner that you substantially reduce the fiscal deficit. Or if you want, in a manner that you increase your revenues and then you rationalize what? Your expenditures. So that the trajectory will lead to reduced fiscal deficit. So that when you are borrowing, it will be, even if you have to borrow, the borrowing is what? Small. So that's the kind of fiscal policy government has been running for the past year, for the past 1 year. Usually, all other things being equal, if you run a fiscal consolidation program, all other things being equal, because you are looking at expenditures and you are rationalizing it, you are reducing expenditures, etc., all other things being equal, it is likely to affect your growth negatively. In other words, it's likely to dampen what? The growth. But watch my words, likely, and all other things being equal. So all other things being equal in economics means ceteris paribus, meaning that you are holding other factors constant. You get the point I'm making? Yeah. But in life, you can't hold all other factors constant. As you are doing the fiscal consolidation, some other things are happening here. This is happening, the exchange rate is, that's happening. So they still come back and do what? An impact on growth. That's why it's not surprising to an economist if the theory says that if you are doing fiscal consolidation, we should see growth coming down. But then it will not be surprising to an economist if that economy sees growth going up, because those all other things being equal, they are not equal. They are also what? Changing. I hope you understand the point I'm making. They can change in favor or against. For example, if you pursue fiscal consolidation and then you improve productivity, whether labor productivity or productivity from the capital side, it's likely to improve on your growth. So in other words, you may be pursuing fiscal consolidation, but the expenditures you are making are growth-oriented expenditures, so that can improve growth. So all of these would have to play out to determine what the final outcomes of the GDP trajectory or GDP numbers, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I thought we were going to give the government statistician a round of applause because, yes, we've been educated on a whole lot of economic issues. So thank you, Dr. Lassa, for the presentation and for the knowledge that you shared with us. So ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful for your presence, and we look forward to seeing you again in another release. Have a great day.
Sorry? Oh my God. There's a catch chief one. Yes.
Thank you.
Where's it?
You
Look at
really
it.
lectured us.
Yeah. Okay.